we're going to do this. This is welcome to the inaugural Premiere Meta Monday. This is really geared toward just kind of learning some valuable tips and tricks of how to use stuff. These will probably be project specific things that people are working on. And one of the things that we're starting on today is schedules. The main thing with schedules is just it is elements within a model that are actually in the model. Like if it's a door that's placed, you're going to see it in the schedule. Um, and so let's jump into this. With schedules, we have like four or five main tabs. You have your fields, which is where you'd select the items that you're wanting to like look at. So these are like your these would be your rows in a sense, or your columns, I should say, that are like these are the mark, like the door mark, which is like the individual number that it has, the width and the height, and then we can begin to look at those in a certain order. So if we want like the first item on the left is going to be the top item here, mark is going to be the thing that we're doing, and so it doesn't have to be. This is just how it appears in the schedule. With filters, you have stuff that it's like the stuff we want to exclude. So we can say that we don't want stuff that equals type mark X. These are things that maybe were modeled as a door for a door schedule, but maybe aren't actually a door, like a door trim that is categorized as a door. And that's a way where we can filter stuff out. We can also filter things out by like certain links. So I can say like my Revit link does not equal this, and it starts with the file name, and we can filter out certain things that way to narrow down our schedule. For sorting and grouping, this is really like how we can itemize what we're seeing. So the way that we do sheets, we want to see every sheet. But sometimes with like doors, we don't need to see every single door. We just want to see like the uh, um, the type of door it is, but we don't need to see that there's 20 different versions of that single type. And so that's one of those where it's like the itemize every instance. And we'll kind of get to that in a little bit. Formatting, it's the fourth tab. This is where we get to like how we want the schedule centered. If it's right justified, left justified in the cell. And then we have like conditional formatting, which I'll get into a little bit later. And then appearances is just sort of like how we want the schedule to look. Does it look like bold lines, thin lines? Is there the striping of the schedule to allow it to read better? So a few things like that. So we're going to jump into fields. Some of the cool things about fields is we can look at more than just like the category. We can look at things like the project information and the Revit links, which becomes really valuable when we're looking at the Revit links within like a site, so that I can begin to see like I want to be able to filter the thing by the Revit link. So I need to be able to have that file name as a parameter to then be able to filter it by. Another cool thing is the additional fields search, so that we can begin to say like what type of parameter is it, what type of discipline is it under, what type of value type does it have. And this is important because in the fields area where we can do you see the FX calculated value, we can actually combine parameters with like Excel to then give us values. So we can say like if we have a parking load factor and we have a unit count, then we can get us a like required parking volume by just combining those values together. But they have to be the same units. We can't do like text and square feet. Those things like wouldn't go together in a sense. So those are things that we do need to make sure that our value or the type of parameter has uh, the unit description that it needs. And then we can also combine parameters. So like if you had two of the same values, but one column has the value in it, and then like another family has it in a different column, we can like combine the two to then like say, I don't need to see it in two different columns. They're different data values, but I can combine them. It's not adding them. It's just like one's missing and the other, and we can combine it to look cleaner. So those are just some helpful things on the fields value tab. So for the filter, this is a great one where we can begin to sort of say like, hey, here's all my data, here's all the information that I have in it, and then I want to then say like, I want to exclude these things. So with like type mark, a lot of stuff that we use, like if you are familiar with Revit, we have a nested door swing, which has a uh, that comes through with the door. So you're also going to see a door swing and you're going to see the door. We don't need the door swing to schedule as a value in the door schedule. So we give the door swing a value of type X and then we exclude it from the schedule. Um, and then for this situation, like I had added another type value, type mark where it does not equal 1. And then you can just like keep adding this. So it's like more or less you can continue to add filters. But ideally, if you're getting down to the bottom and you're still having to add filters, you have a larger coordination issue. And that's just a thing that we should look into of like, hey, what is it that we can do to fix this to where like you're really just using like 2 or 3 filters. Um, but then you can see like you pretty much pick your parameter, you pick the value of how you want it to be filtered by, and you have this whole list of equals, does not equal, greater than, contains. So there's a bunch of ways we can control how we're excluding things. And then that helps us get to getting to the next tab, which is oops, to sorting and grouping. And so this is a great example of how we're uh, how the main ways that we can organize the data to be in order. So like sheet indexes, we sort our sheet indexes by this parameter called sheet sort because we want the title sheet T sheet to be the first thing. If we were to do that alphabetically by like sheet number, it wouldn't work. We would get A's in the first and S's would be at the back, and like it just winds up being a huge headache. So what we did was we inputted a sheet sort parameter, and then we have it ascending based upon the sheet sort, and then it's by sheet number. So in this case, this is a I'm organizing this data by file name, and then by mark, and then by type mark. And so to show you that, um, here's a great example of it's organized by file name. So I have my like clubhouse fitness, my pool house, my maintenance building, and then I can see that these are the doors within that building, and I can say like, oh, some of this probably needs to be coordinated. Like I've got some trim here. This 11 doesn't have any data to it. So there's probably some like coordination I probably need to do to eliminate that because this is the site file that I'm going to be printing from, where all my schedules are coming from. So if I'm seeing bust here, this allows me to kind of, hey, like either delegate it or go investigate, like, why is that? And sometimes that might just be like adding a filter and say like eliminate the trim type mark. So just kind of like looking at how we can organize this data to then be normal, like and more palatable, digestible for us to be able to use. Okay. Does anyone have any questions? All right.
Not on this schedule, but I'll talk to you later about what you were talking about with filtering out square footages and whatnot.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so for formatting, again, this is typically like any formatting tab, you're going to be able to like change what your heading is. So if we have a parameter value that then we don't really want it to say manufacturer, we want it to say like basis of design, we can change that here without having to change the parameter value. We can uh, obviously orient things, whether it's like sitting high in or in the middle or in the bottom of the cell, if it's in the center, left, right, justified. And then conditional formatting, which this was something that I find really interesting, where we can highlight stuff that's like when there's a bust so that it keys you in visually to, hey, there's a problem here. These are things that we can add in, but right now we just kind of, we use conditional formatting, but it's something we can develop and use yourself. And so appearances, this is again where you can like format the border, the border of the individual cells if you want that, if you want the striping, and then the text font of what the schedule looks like. So ideally, when we get into schedule templates, that there's a lot of like stuff that we can control for schedules so that they're consistent across projects. So ideally, that's kind of giving you the heads up of like how you can control the fields, filters, sorting and grouping, formatting and appearance. But most of this is controlled with a template for us. One of the things that uh, we'll do, and you can kind of see in that schedule template file here, as I have a master and then I have a sheet. Um, I like to do two different types of schedules. One is like the master schedule that's I can see everything, all the parameters are visible, and then I can like manipulate and use that data. That is not necessarily on a um, sheet. The sheet view is like what I want formatted to be like it looks just like this, and I don't really adjust that schedule because it's like the thing that's on the sheet that I don't want to adjust. Um, and so one of the things like when you grow a schedule and you start doing things, you'll notice that like with your sheet formatting, like which is different from the actual formatting of the schedule itself, but of like, hey, it doesn't fit, and I need to adjust the like cell width, or I need to like split the schedule into like doing it across like that. And so with each schedule, there's this little um, it's like lightning bolt symbol that appears where you can click that and then split the schedule and it'll bump it over. And that allows you to kind of like split the schedule if you wanted to stack the schedule at the top of the sheet, or if you wanted to like it runs out of room and you need to like then bring it back. But if you realize, oh, I can actually combine this back, you just grab the crosshairs and then drag it back under the main schedule and it'll like reattach itself to the main schedule. So those are those two things, sheet formatting and schedule templates. And then for exporting itself, we can export these schedules to Excel. So a lot of interiors, they will have been using this to then create um, a basis of design schedule and then input the information into Excel and then bring that Excel information back in to then have a dummy schedule, which then allows us to like skip the whole process of coordinating a lighting schedule or a finish schedule, um, stuff like that, that like we can give you the template kind of to get you set up, but then it allows you to work in a format like Excel that we're probably more familiar with and isn't as cumbersome as Revit.
That's cool.
Okay, so some cool tips and tricks for schedules is the control scroll. If you're like, hey, I like this schedule's like really small, I can't see it. You can in the schedule, you can press control and then scroll into it. It also this works in Excel as well, but you can like zoom in and out of the schedule. You can't actually if you don't like press control, you can't zoom, but if you do press control, it helps. Um, Highlight and model is a super helpful button. This allows us to work from a schedule to be like, hey, I'm trying to coordinate the uncoordinated items that are missing or that I'm not seeing. And then you can click that and it'll take you to a view that has that element. So where you can better understand like, is this a two panel? Is this a one panel? Like, uh, what am I missing that I'm like that's not there kind of thing. And then batch editing, some of y'all have worked on this, but it's like if you organize your data properly, you can batch edit these things really quickly. So like while you're looking at information from like I could jump into here and say like I want to join all my wood materials together, all my aluminum clad and steel and like jump that together and be like, okay, I have four materials of doors and what am I missing? And are these like doors gonna all be wood that are uncoordinated? Then I can just put wood in there and it like inputs that data into all the information. So it's a way to think about like, hey, I can organize this and compress it down and then like input that data and then it saves me from doing it 40 times. Um, so that's that. Let's see what else. All right, we're gonna pivot to some few things that we're gonna talk about that are more project based. So does anyone have any questions after we jump into this? All right, Keaton, shoot me with your question.
Mine was about trying to figure out we've got to do the condo documentation plans. So we're starting to coordinate kind of what's common space, what's private space, what's common use space kind of things.
Hmm.
And it sounded like what you were talking about might be able to help us start to filter out or add views to that.
Hmm.
I know Carleone had worked on something, right? Like with the Mountain Brook building, they had a condo there. And they were trying to document kind of some of that space, and also the lawyer sent over a kind of an example document for what to shoot, kind of what to shoot for, what he was expecting to see. I was just going to try to get with you to at least today or tomorrow
Hmm.
to try to figure out and see if that was something that we could get together. But this sounded like it filtered out some of that maybe, or could.
Yeah, we can, it just depends. What you're talking about seems like a more like an area plan, which is something we can cover, sort of how we can get uh, gross and net areas
Hmm.
to then be able to calculate. And that really gets into defining what those areas are. But then we can then like it ties in with schedules because we can then like add areas to that and say we want to have an area schedule. And
Right.
then that
That's,
allows us to like name those certain areas. And then we can organize those areas based upon unit types and then get those numbers out of that. So that's like a great example of like, hey, we may not have a direct use like in a construction document to use a that type of filter, but we
mhm.
use it for project management because we've got to create these pieces that we don't necessarily include in our visual graphics that we're using, but it's something that we still need to do to like, you know,
Move
uh,
the project
move
along.
the project along, get the client what they need, and we can use Revit to do that. So um, we used on Prospect Park, we used a occupancy um, schedule and color scheme to then be able to do what essentially apply the the areas to a um, occupancy type, which was then like the unit. So that each unit had its own name, and then that had its own color, and then that gave us a value. So we
I
can
think that's kind
definitely.
of what I'm talking about.
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay. Let's get together after this and then we can pull the old drawing from what Carlina did and Prospect Park even.
Okay, great. Well, does anyone have anything else? That kind of concludes the Meta Monday on schedules. Any comments?
So what happened in Everly, I guess there towards the end where we realized a bunch of stuff wasn't coordinated, was essentially the mistake there that as things were getting modeled, they weren't like I wasn't building the schedule in tandem essentially by making sure that everything in the model had like a data tie to a schedule.
Correct. Yeah, and
Okay.
that's something that we have circumvented going forward with links, and that when we
Okay.
are that dealt with model groups being reloaded and that we were reloading information that had not been coordinated, so it doubled the amount of work we were doing. So you had to coordinate it, and then we also had to coordinate it in terms of like the architect interior divide.
Mm-hmm.
Ideally,
Mm-hmm.
this will not happen going forward, and um, you'll know, and anyone knows that like there's a lot of data attached to the things that we are using, and so if you're not coordinating that data, then you can you're kind of taking it on credit. You're going to have to pay that debt at some point to then refresh that data and to coordinate the information because that's how we look at things. We're not trying to fudge stuff. We're
Mm-hmm.
trying to like do things as accurately as possible because then that saves us from having uncoordinated items and RFIs and change orders and the more we can do on this front end, which
Mm-hmm.
is what our job is just to coordinate all this stuff. And so schedules are that thing where it is cumbersome, it's tedious, but if you can wrap your mind around the schedule, you can wrap your mind around the project really well.
Okay, follow up.
Mhm.
Can you kind of talk through now what the difference will be with Prospect Park or Point Hope, for example, where we're using links? Will there just be like a master schedule that lives in the building file or the
Hmm.
container file?
Hmm.
Like
Yeah,
what?
really,
Okay.
it's not much different than
Okay.
what we've currently done. It's just the way that that item is loaded in and the way
Okay.
that we can refresh it is going to be more up to date and live. Um,
Mm.
and go
Doesn't
ahead
it
if you.
well, at least from what I was noticing, doesn't it just keep us from having to do the work twice?
Yes.
Like on the
Okay.
architectural side, that so once any of the interiors team uploads their model or they finish their schedule in their unit model, when we link that into our building, we actually don't have to go back through the building plan and double check that information on the individual doors. It's actually just controlled from your model instead of ours. We
Okay.
just sort of one that kind of, I think the way Kurt said it to me, it was like we're pointing back at your model. It's pulling that information into the schedule. Is that
Got it.
correct?
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay.
Hmm.
Cool.
Cool. Thank you.
It's a
Mark,
lot
what
more
you got?
helpful to be a link.
I know you got a question, Mark.
You're muted.
I'm just glad to be here, Kurt. Thank
Welcome.
you. Yeah, I'm
We're
jumping
glad to
in
have you.
slowly but surely.
That's right. I'm gonna get you on my schedule sometime. So,
Nice. I'm excited.
all right, guys. Well, if no one has anything else, I appreciate y'all hopping on first time. Um, I will look forward to seeing y'all next week. So,
Thanks,
have a
Kurt.
great Monday. Bye.
See you in a few.